Welcome back. Now, an education NGO has warned there will be a shortage of teachers in South Africa in years to come. Of course, one of the last things we need, given the focus on education to help uplift the economy, to help deal with the unemployment crisis. We're joined by the CEO of School Days, Paul Esterhuizen now. Mr. Esterhuizen, thank you for being with us. Why are you predicting this shortage? What is the situation now and what do you predict?
Hello, Francis. Thank you for having me on the show. And yes, to all the viewers out there, it's not me making a prediction. It's based on, and at long last, we have some really substantive research that's coming out of Stellenbosch University. They released no fewer than 10 papers early in December on a project that's been commissioned by Stellenbosch University's research on socio-economic policy and around where we're at. But this whole team of more than 16 research analysts have been taking a deep look at the teacher demographics. They've called it the Teacher Demographic Dividend Project, and to the point of, are we going to have a teacher shortage? The facts are there. They're real. More than 50% of the teachers in the public environment are in actual fact employed by a Department of Basic Education, and they're approaching the retirement years because they're over the age of 50 right now. It's more chronic and more significant in the primary school areas where we have a lot of older teachers who are planning their retirement paths, and it's coming soon. So
help me to understand this. So there are not enough young people coming up through the system being hired by basic education. Now, is that because of finances? We know basic education, given the lion's share, but that's not increasing over time. What about the desire to be teachers? Is that there? Is there enough supply if there were the finances to hire enough youngsters to replace those retired teachers?
Well, let's play it by the numbers, Francis, because, you know, if I'm watching and I'm wanting to get a snapshot view of where we're at, it's great that we've got some in-depth research. But by the numbers, the Department of Basic Education employ more than 400,000 teachers. We have 40% of those will be retiring in the next 5 years. And are the universities producing enough students? So question, enough teachers. So from that student pool, the question that we have to ask ourselves is teaching an attractive career option for a youngster at school? So by the numbers, 2019, 28,000 teachers qualify and graduate into the system. This last year, we employed 15,000. So the Department of Basic Education is employing an inadequate number of those who are actually graduating. So if you're wanting to go and be a teacher, parents, families, communities, we will look at our children and say, is this a career option for you? So what we're seeing is we're not employing enough, and the questions being asked and the research now points to the fact that the rate at which a salary increase is being affected in schools. So a school has a budget. They employ a number of teachers. The teachers get an annual increase. The Department of Basic Education is not giving enough education budget increase to accommodate that and employ to replace the retiring teachers.
All right. So this is a money issue. This is a money issue in effect.
I would say it's categorically a money issue, because if we're making this a career path, and there are a number of factors that do influence this. So we have non-fee paying schools, and the bulk of those are out in the rural communities. And then we have fee-paying schools, which are modeled with school governing bodies, and parents are then deemed to have to pay an annual school fee to have their children at school. And, you know, we modeled school days around how do you pay for the school days of your child's life. And if you're saying I'm going from grade 1 to grade 12, 200 days a year, how do I pay for those school days of the year? So schools that are charging an annual fee for the child to be at school, which are the school fees we have to pay, which are looming large in January, we see that parents struggling don't pay the school fees at the ratios at which they were 5, 10, and 15 years ago. So schools' budgets are not being met, and the capacity to hire more teachers is not there. So, you know, sitting here and talking about the problem we have warrants that we actually look out at all of our viewers and say, South Africa, how do we, how does each and every one of us get involved? Because so much of what we do is out of our control and out of our hands. And the magic at this time of the year is that we have a massive switch off and the calendar pages turn and we move into a new year. And then what do we find? We find ourselves staring down the what are we going to do? And in the heart of every single parent is the reality that I want my child to be well educated, to be smarter. Cyril Ramaphosa, who chairs the Adopt a School Foundation, was quoted as saying at their 20th year celebrations, he was saying that we will write the history of this nation in the books, but the future of this nation will be written on the chalkboards of our schools. So the learning environment is a real one. It's a community one. And it's about each and every person in this country saying, well, what do I do? How do I look back at my education and go to my alma mater and say, let me contribute to that, and how do I do that? Because if I can make that small difference, and if a parent is struggling to pay fees, and we as communities can look at saying, how do we get involved? How do we go and say, we identify we've got problems, we need more teachers, we need more teachers to be employed, because we potentially do have enough teachers. We've got to keep producing them, and we've got to say, when you have studied for 4 years, we're going to give you the opportunity to be employed.
Yeah.
And you will have a future in teaching, and you will be able to be promoted to be a head of department and a vice principal, a deputy principal, and you will ultimately be a principal if we can build that career path. But we're actually not doing that. And the breakdown is a significant one because of the fact that these budgets are not coming together at the rate that they should. So education budgets need to increase at more than the consumer price index ratios. And we need to be saying to teachers, you can earn and earn a living here. So moms and dads, encourage your children to be teachers, and then let the business community say, well, how do we get involved? And not in pockets, but collectively.
Yeah.
So if we could collectively go into our communities and say, where are the nearest schools? What do I need to do? Do we need to support them? Parents, don't drop your children at school. Go and walk the corridors. Go and meet the teachers. Don't just throw stones at the dilemmas that they have where they've got 40 and 50 and 60 children in a class and a teacher trying to teach that number of teachers. The number of learners in a class is a difficult place to want to be. So we need to bring those ratios down. We need to continually attract more youngsters into the teaching environment, because this is not an overnight fix. This is a career path. It's a long-term project that has to be done. And interesting, we're going to be, for the next 2 years, getting the quality of this research coming out of Stellenbosch University, because it's a project that's been commissioned for 3 years. So Francis, I'm not giving you a gap to ask me anything.
It's great knowledge to have, and you are being so positive, and I don't want to undermine that. But without something being done, you're talking about those ratios, and we know that they undermine education outcomes. If you are in a class of 30, 40, 50, even 60 in Gauteng, we're just not building schools fast enough. Then it's really hard to learn. So that situation will get worse, and I see there's already an average of 30 per class. Is that correct?
Well, that's countrywide. So if you go by province, you'll understand that each province has its own budgets, and then it has its own capacity, and the Department of Basic Education has its budget in its province. So where they're looking at the fact of the matter, in the public environment, we are not building adequate and facility-wise, we're not building schools that can cope with the influx of learners. So we need to collectively go in and say, well, let's address these ratios, because the ratio is put at 30-1, and that's been a sliding ratio out from 27 children in a class to 1 teacher. But that doesn't accommodate the teacher who's ill, who's on sick leave, who is away. And do we have replacement teachers? Because suddenly those numbers do swell up. We've got schools here. I'm in Gauteng. We've got schools where there are more than 40 learners on average in the classes. And how do you rectify that? Well, that local school needs to look at saying, how can we get more student interns? And could we, as a school community, could the parents, could business? And I'm saying that again, could business get involved in saying, where do we go to support this?
Yeah.
Where do we find a platform that enables business and communities to work together. And we're modeling that in a platform that we've designed and we've put out there to say we want to make a difference as School Days. And that's the name of our business. It's called School Days. And we're saying to businesses, modeling with your existing budgets, understanding communities, understanding the needs of schools, how do we go in and ensure that schools can have more teachers? One of the answers to that is to have interns and to say a student intern will be able to earn money and study and then still be employed thereafter. So that addresses some of those critical needs. And you're so right. We don't want this to just happen where curriculum is delivered. We want curriculum delivered with excellence. So we want to be able to say, wow, my children are thriving. They're not aiming for 40% as a pass mark or 30% as a pass mark and being promoted to the next year. Because all we're doing is we're pushing them into a curriculum which will not be able to be coped with because they've been pushed through with a low average in the first year. So
Mr. Esterhuizen, we've run out of time. This issue is so complex, but thank you. And presumably people can contact School Days if they are interested. And I guess you've laid out the stakes, education, a leading indicator pointing to where we are going as a country in future, the economy, and of course the lives of those children also deeply affected. Thank you very much. Paul Esterhuizen from School Days, the CEO.